nights of going through this being held down. And I thought it was God like allowing this to happen because I wasn't a good enough Christian. I didn't have enough faith, and I wasn't handling my grief correctly. And it wasn't until years later that I realized through going to therapy that a therapist told me there's actually a word for this. There's a medical term. There's a psychological term for this. They're called night terrors. And if you've ever experienced it, you know how terrifying they are. And is it any wonder that during this time, it's the same time that I started pouring massive amounts of alcohol into my body? Because that was the only thing that could calm my mind. It was the only thing that I found that could take away the anxiety. It was the only thing I found that would allow me to sleep. Thank you, buddy, for my phone. And what I realized was, in looking back, the thinking was, I am going to control this thing. I'm going to control this circumstance through a substance. And the truth is, it worked until it didn't work. And the other truth is, I knew for a long time before getting sober that I needed to get sober, but by this time, this thing had a hold of my mind, and I didn't know how to change this thing. And are we a people addicted to control? And change comes along and simply highlights this addiction. Do y'all know it was several years ago now that we made a significant change in the Canada household? Our two girls, we have two girls, two boys. Our two girls, they were younger then. They were age 2 and 4. And we changed from 2 single beds in their bedroom into bunk beds. If you've ever dealt with bunk beds, you know what I'm talking about here. Very significant change. In fact, bunk beds should always come with a warning label on them. Like, parents, beware, you're about to be very miserable. Beware, when you have to climb up there and take their sheets off and wash their sheets and then remake the beds, it's a new level of ministry. It's like next level misery. And this fascinating thing happened. Selah, who was like 4 years old at the time, she was so obsessed with the ladder. She was on the top bunk. And she would be up and down this ladder, up and down, up and down. She had to go to the bathroom. She had to tell mom something. She had to tell Poppy something. She had to get some water, up and down this ladder. And that ladder made all kinds of noise when she would go up and down the ladder. So one night, I'm feeling so frustrated. I am tired. It's late. I want to get some sleep. And she's up and down this stupid ladder. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to step in. I'm going to control this thing. I've got the solution. And so I stomp into her room and I disconnect the ladder from the bed. And I said, baby, you ain't getting out of this bed again because I'm taking the ladder with me. And I went back to my bedroom and I laid down and I put that ladder on my chest. And Tammy, my wife, she was looking at me like I was some sort of crazy man. I might have been a little bit, but I found the solution. She looks at me, she says, Rye, dude, you gotta put the ladder back. Why do I have to put the ladder back? She needs to learn a lesson here and I'm gonna control this thing. And why do I have to put it back? She's just up and down the ladder. Ryan, you gotta put the ladder back because what if she has to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? You just want her to roll out of bed and fall on the floor? What if she gets up before you in the morning? Well, how do you expect her to get out of bed? Ryan, you gotta put the ladder back. So it took me some time. It took a minute, but I was able to see that she was right. So I took the ladder off my chest and I went and connected it back to the bed. And have you ever had those moments in your life where sometimes you know the right thing to do, but you don't want to do it. You would rather control it, even when you know the control doesn't work. And sometimes you even know the right things to say, and you know when to say the right things, but your mind hasn't really changed. There's a very fascinating parable told by Jesus in Matthew's gospel. And I call it fascinating, but do you know I've been preaching since I was 18 years old. I have never preached, I've never had in my sermon this parable because I always looked at it and thought, out of all the interesting parables, this is like the most boring one. Why would we ever look at it? And in rereading it, this thing is actually really interesting, but on the face of it, it's really boring. So I want to look at this boring parable with you, and I want to remind you, this is Jesus. Keep in mind, parables are just short stories that Jesus would tell, and in this one, he is talking to the religious leaders of the day, and here's how this boring parable goes. Matthew chapter 21. What do you think? A man had 2 sons. Now he came to the first and said, 'Son, go and work in the vineyard today.' 'No, I don't want to,' he replied. But later he changed his mind and went. The father said the same thing to the other son, who replied, 'Yes, sir,' but he didn't go. Which one of these two did his father's will?" Which one? Yeah, the first son. He said the wrong thing, but he ended up doing the right thing. It's like such an obvious answer. It's what makes this thing boring. Even the religious leaders answered correctly. Jesus asked them, "What do you think?" How'd they respond? They said, "The first one." Jesus said to them, "I assure you that tax collectors and prostitutes are entering God's kingdom ahead of you." How do you like that for a little story turn? We go from vineyards to prostitutes. How's that? Interesting, though, isn't it? The first son says the wrong thing but does the right thing. The second son says all the right things but doesn't change his mind enough to actually do the right thing. And keep in mind, parables, all of them, they are meant to invoke, they are meant to surprise and expose and turn things upside down and give new perspective. And you're reading this thing saying, wait a minute, so where's the twist in it? Can you imagine Jesus gets done with this story and then Jesus starts walking away, and what are the religious leaders left with? The religious leaders are left with, wait a minute. The first son does the will of the Father. He says the wrong thing, but he does the right thing. And the second one says all the right things, but does the wrong thing. And I think if what Jesus is telling us is that we religious leaders are like the second son. We know all the right things to say. We even know the right time to say them, but we have not changed our mind to actually do the right things. And by the way, who are the religious leaders of the day? They're the ones who are trying to control the message of God's love, trying to control who's in and who's out. And Jesus comes along and shakes the whole thing up, and they didn't know how to respond to this change. They didn't know what to do with it except with their old methods of control. And what was Jesus' parting words to them? Man, even tax collectors and prostitutes have a better chance at the fullness of life than you do. Whew. Now, y'all, I do know in a community filled with addicts and loved ones of addicts and spiritual refugees, the last thing we want to be compared to is a bunch of religious leaders. And yet, sometimes, because the best parables get us to see ourselves in the other, sometimes we look a lot like them, don't we? I mean, change comes along and we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to handle it. We get afraid and we resist. Well, we might even know all the right things to say and the right times to say it, but we don't know how to change our mind to actually do it. That change comes along and it puts us into fear, our addiction to control, trying to control everything and everyone around us, and it leaves us tied up in this box. And I think every time we get there, I imagine God asking us, yo, do you really love your illusion to control more than you do your own freedom? Because you do know the whole thing is about you being free so that you can help others be free. And y'all be very careful, because when change comes along, well, you can try to control it. Change comes along in life, and it just has a way of highlighting our addiction to control. And be careful, because it happens even when the change is good. Anyone ever struggled when the change is good? We don't know how to handle it. Because even the good change, it brings up all kinds of fears in us, doesn't it? You know, I was telling y'all last week about Tammy and I starting free in 2018 in our backyard, and I told you that story, retold that story. And it was this beautiful, exciting time in life, and we were like both in it, all in, starting this thing, and it took a lot of work. We were doing so many things, and we were doing them together, and then 2020 comes along, and Tammy launches Wagon Coffee Roasters, her own business, which is a beautiful thing, very much in alignment with the mission here at Free. And still to this day, I get a lot of joy when I see her joy, her passion. I mean, she loves roasting coffee. She loves everything about coffee, and she got to step into her passion, and she's thriving and getting coffee in so many different places, and she's growing. And in the midst of the good, do you know what happened? Well, Ryan gets a little afraid because even the good can bring about fear. And I start living up here, and what if Tammy doesn't like free anymore? What if I'm losing my partner in crime, and she's not going to do as many tasks anymore, and it's all going to fall on me? And what if we start to drift apart? And what if, and I got to control this thing, because when I get in fear, I run to control, and I've got to control what she does and when she does it. I got to tell her what to do, the illusion of control. And do y'all know where I had to arrive? I had to arrive at the place that says, wait a minute. Tammy can do and be involved and free in whichever way she wants, however much she wants. I do not have to control that. I can actually relinquish that control. And guess what? When I do that, our marriage is better, because I can create conflict around all that stuff. When I do that, our relationship is better. We're both freer. Yeah. Ryan, do you really love your illusion of control more than your own freedom? See, we have to be careful even with the good. And see, in your life and in your recovery, I want to remind you, you are going to encounter constant change. It will be the only constant. And some of those changes are going to be harder to deal with than others. And parts of you will want to crawl back to your old methods of control, even though you know it doesn't work. In your life and your recovery, you will have career changes, or you're going to have living situation changes, or relationship changes, or watching your loved one get sober changes, or watching your loved one go deeper into their addiction changes. If you're new in your recovery, you're going to have all kinds of changes very quickly. You might even have some spiritual deepening changes, because you are now opening yourself to a new perspective. And in my experience, you will have to have a shift of mindset. You will have to have a change of mind, or as the Apostle Paul calls it in the New Testament, a transformation of mind. And it all sounds really good and well, but how do we get there? How do we do it? And I would say to you, acceptance. And I get it, acceptance is way easier said than done. And if you're a bit fuzzy on how to define acceptance, well, the way I define it is very simple. It is you coming to terms with your limitations and your power. You might not get to control the timing of the change, and you certainly cannot control the people involved in the change, but you do get to control you and your response to the change. That means you cannot change your circumstance, and I know that's a very harsh reality for some of us. It means you want to be free. Or as the long form of the Serenity Prayer says it, if you haven't ever read it, I highly recommend it. The long form says, do you want to be reasonably happy? Well, that requires a change within. That requires a change of mind, a new perspective. And there's a beautiful part of the big book of AA, and it describes it this way. It says, acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. Unless I accept my life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as what needs to be changed in me and in my attitude. So my brothers and sisters, I would ask you, what needs to change within you? Because if change is the only constant, if change is always happening all around us, well, that means that you too can change. Do you know the hardest class I took while in seminary? It was my last semester there. I was there 3 years. My last semester in seminary. I was in the height of my addiction. The hardest class I took, and I took this class because I thought it would be easy, and I had a heavy load that semester. It was a class on prayer and meditation. And I get to class the first day, and the professor, and I sit down, and she says to the class, she says, all right, we're going to begin this class with 20 minutes of silence. And I thought, perfect. This is why I took this. It's going to be easy. 20 minutes of silence, and I just want you to let your thoughts be. And I thought, easy, start the timer. 4 minutes in, I was absolutely miserable. Because you want to make an active alcoholic who's active in their addiction, want to make them miserable, tell them, encourage them to sit with their own thoughts for a moment. That's misery. Who wants to do that? That's worse than bunk beds. 4 minutes in, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way this works. And I'm looking around the classroom and I'm thinking, come on, you people know this doesn't work. You've got to be miserable. You've got to be crawling out of your skin like I am. And then the professor says, after the 20 minutes was up, she says, okay, now I want you to get out a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down this Bible verse. And I thought, easy, I can do this one. She said, I want you to write down Psalm 46:10. Psalm 46:10 says, be still and know that I'm God. But she says, listen, I want you to not just write the verse, but write the verse this way. And she had it on the screen for us. It was, be still and know that I'm God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and be still be. And I thought, all right, I can do this. And I start writing. And I wrote it several times, and I was absolutely miserable. I was so frustrated because it dawned on me that I have no clue how to be still. And she said, write it until you can just be still and be still with your thoughts till you can just be. And I thought, I have no clue how to be still. I have no clue how to trust God with my stillness. And I start looking around the room, and I'm thinking, man, just give me a drink, because I know the drink can work for this thing. It can calm this thing down. And I'm looking around the room, and I'm seeing people that look like they're at peace. Some of them are even smiling as they're writing this verse. And I thought, that's BS. Y'all know you don't feel this. 2 minutes left in the class, she stops us and she starts pointing out to different students, and she says, what does it feel like? What did it feel like to be still? And some students that she called on, they were saying crazy, bizarre things like, oh, I just felt at such peace. I felt calm. BS. Other students were saying, oh, man, I could feel God's nearness. Come on, man, you're just saying that because we're in a spiritual setting and you think you have to say that. You didn't feel that. Thank God she didn't call on me. I was going to tell her the truth. What does it feel like? Well, have you ever heard of purgatory? That's what this feels like. This is purgatory. I did not know how to do it. And yet 5 years later, when I got sober and into recovery, I could then, at that point, begin to learn how to be still. I could begin to learn how to stop comparing myself to other people. And that is a long journey. It's a lifelong journey. But today I know that comparison always kills acceptance. Comparison always shuts out the voice of God. If change in your life is always difficult, if change in your life is always hard, well, then you might need to change something about you, a change of mind to get still. If the only constant is change, then that means you too can change. And in the midst of change, are you always looking at other people? Are you looking at them to judge where you are, where you measure up with your success? And what's it look like over time? It looks like looking around the room saying, they're not real. Man, they're fake. They're not authentic. I know they don't feel that. They're just lying. When all the while it was my own fears that I could never do what I see them doing. You see, if you're always looking at others, maybe the change for you is to stop doing that and start looking within. And I'll close with this. There's this beautiful moment in John's gospel where Jesus is reunited with one of his best friends, one of his disciples. It's a guy named Peter. The same Peter, by the way, who denied Jesus 3 times right before his death. Right before the Romans took him to this Roman execution stake and executed him on the cross. Well, Peter was there, and these Roman soldiers were saying, yo, we're about to kill this guy, but weren't you with him? Aren't you friends with this one? Don't you hang out with him? 3 different times, Peter said, not me. Man, you got the wrong guy. I've never seen him. I don't know him from Adam. Jesus is put to death. There's resurrection. Post-resurrection, Jesus is reunited with Peter on this beach, and it was supposed to be this beautiful moment. He essentially says to Peter, look, Peter, dude, you have some purpose in your life. Your mission is you get to go help other people. You get to go love other people. And Peter, you have some work to do in here so that you can go out there and be of maximum service to God and other people. And it should have been this moment of receiving like mission and purpose. And instead, do you know how Peter responds? Peter says, yeah, but Lord, what about him? Totally missed it. And I love Jesus' response. How does Jesus respond? Jesus says to Peter, Peter, what difference does that make to you? What about him? What about her? What about them? What difference does that make to you? You, my brothers and sisters, have great purpose in your life. Oh, the places you'll go in your recovery, but you might have some work to do in here so that you can actually go out there. Stop comparing yourself to others and comparing yourself to where they are in their journey and how beautifully they handle change in their life. Stop doing that. You're where you are, and you are here. So start here and start with a bit of stillness, acceptance. So what we're going to do now is sit in 20 minutes of silence, and you're going to get out a piece of paper. I'm just kidding, y'all. I'm just kidding. Were you crawling out of your skin? But I do want to invite you into a moment of stillness. I want to invite you into a moment of reflection. We'll hear this song, Be Still and Know, and I invite you to just let these words hover over you. Let the words hover within. Maybe you're going through a life change. Maybe it's a big one. Maybe it's a little one. Do you trust God with your stillness? Can you be still with this thing? What a huge gift that is today. Take a moment and be still and know. you feeling still? I kind of am, but I had my 9-year-old boy, almost 9 years old, running up to me back and forth because he's watching the Nuggets game tonight because they might win 10 in a row. It's kind of a big moment. Yeah. All right, y'all, if you're joining us for the first time, if you're joining us online, you should know that every Saturday night we have a guest storyteller in the house to share with us just a piece of their story, some experience, strength, and hope from their own perspective. And tonight, I know many of you know John Allison. He's been part of this community for almost since the beginning. It was the first week after moving out of our backyard and into our old location, which was the location before this place. John comes tonight from the perspective of the loved one of an addict. And I interviewed John. We didn't have a living room at the time, but I interviewed him. It was about 4 years ago. And John said undoubtedly some very profound things. But just in the last few months, like John's always hanging out in the cafe, John and Carrie, and hanging out with others, and he's always helping other people. And man, he's just dropped these wisdom bombs on me. And one of the wisdom bombs that I want him to share with you tonight is he was sharing with me that we're all the same. It may not look like it, but we're all the same in what we're chasing and what we get healing with and from. And I can't wait for y'all to hear some of his story. Help me welcome my friend and brother, John Allison, to the living room. Let's do it again, man. All right. We'll start here, John. One of the things John was telling me was, I don't know when it was, a few weeks back, someone in this community was saying to John, because they found out he was just the loved one of an addict, and this person said to you, man, how do you feel being around all of us? Does it make you uncomfortable? And the way you framed that for me, I was telling you earlier tonight that it helped give me a new language for this community. And I want you to talk about how do you engage that question? Do you feel uncomfortable around people like me?
Anyway, my wife and I have been part of this community, like Ryan said, from the beginning, outside the backyard. And there's a lot of new people here now. It's grown, which is cool to see.
Yep.
And I always introduce myself to people. But over the last maybe 6 months to a year, I've talked to a couple different people, and we just introduce ourselves. And as the conversation goes on, he finds that I'm a loved one of an addict, and it was always like, oh man, he's like, do you feel uncomfortable around all of us? I'm like, I didn't know how to take it. I'm thinking, us. I don't think it's really us. It's we, and we have a lot of similarities in what the road we've traveled through with this addiction. And I refer to it as an addiction because some of the choices and some of the things I did resembled addiction.
Yeah.
My addiction led me to chase my drug. I have a drug of choice. It's a loved one. I experienced things like withdrawal. And
this is what's so cool about his story. Everything he describes where his addiction to the loved one, he went through all the same things we went through as ones who were addicted to the substance. But you talk about withdrawal. What'd that look like?
Withdrawal to me was, I've listened to a lot of stories here. I've been in this community a long time, so I've heard people like, yeah, the withdrawal is terrible, man. I was achy. I was laying on the couch. I was out of commission. I experienced the same thing. I was on the couch. I was achy. I was experiencing something that felt like the flu. And my response to everybody was like, hey, you feeling okay? It's like, yeah, I think I just got a little bit of the flu. But I knew what it was. It was my withdrawal from the control that was not working. I was trying to control all these situations, and when control didn't work, I went into withdrawal because I couldn't get my drug. I was like, oh my God, I can't find it. So I started feeling terrible.
Yeah.
And that's what withdrawal felt like to me.
So the illusion of control, when you thought it was working, when you thought control was working, what'd that make you feel like?
When control worked, when I thought it worked, everything was good. I had this euphoria of this high. That was my high that I was feeling. Found my drug, I felt high. And that resembled the use of drugs.
Yeah.
And so when I was having conversations with others, I experienced similar things. And some people said, I went to jail and prison. My health, I was in the hospital. My health was bad. Well, I thought I was having a heart attack. I went to the hospital, felt like I was having a heart attack because of all this anxiety, because anxiety would crush down on me. And I showed up at Littleton Hospital one day and said, pulled into the parking lot. The anxiety was, this was in the height of my addiction, which the control was not working. I was having a heart attack, which was just anxiety, and went into the hospital after doing about 100 push-ups and a bunch of jumping jacks in the parking lot. Went in, the triage nurse checked all my vitals. She's like, "Sir, your heart rate is through the roof." He's like, "Is it normally this high?" And I said, "No, I was in the parking lot. I think I'm having a heart attack. I don't know what it feels like, but I did all these exercises in the parking lot just to see if I would die." Because I knew if I was going to stroke out or have a heart attack here,
You're in the right place.
I was right in front of the ER.
And it turns out you were just a hopeless addict.
I was a hopeless addict.
So you also said it made you, this thing made you unkind to people. You had the Safeway guy, the bank teller, traffic stories. I was telling Tammy about one of these stories. I know we won't go into details, but how to bring out your unkindness, how you mistreated people.
Well, in the between the withdrawals and then really in the deepest of my addiction, when things didn't work, when control wasn't working for me, I turned to anger, hate. I treated people terribly.
What'd you do to the bank teller?
One of the stories is in the deepest of my addiction, I went to the bank. I have a small business. I had to make a deposit that day. It was 2-3 minutes till 5 o'clock. Pulled up in the drive-through. I had to wait a couple of minutes. I pulled up, and as I was in the drive-through, that little door shut from that little tube that you put the deposit in. And I'm like, "Oh, hold on a second." I pushed the help button. This little kid's back there. He's like, "I'm sorry, sir, but you're going to make that deposit the next day." And I went off. I told that kid, I said, "You don't open this little door here. I'm going to crawl through this tube, and I'm going to strangle you." And he went to get a supervisor, and I was just going off. My head was hanging out of the car, and I was just, it was anger at its finest. And I got the withdrawal made. Yeah, but that was one of them. I had other stories where when I treated people badly, it was people that I didn't know, and
you just crush them.
I just would say things, and the shame set in. Just like in active addiction, the shame and the anger and things just set in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good feeling. It made me feel bad.
And the language you give us is we're all the same because we were all chasing a drug. Your drug was a loved one in your life who was addicted to the substance. But for you, one of the bottoms at least was one of the low moments was, I think, when a police officer told you, "John, dude, you got to stop. You're going to end up dead or in prison if you don't stop."
Right.
What'd that feel like?
It felt terrible, and it hit home. I was something tragic happened, or there was something else that happened in my life that set me on that rage and rampage. And I had a family member call the police. It was Douglas County. To say, can you visit our home? My husband's there, and I just need to have somebody see him. A female officer showed up at the house, and she let me know why she was there. She said, "We need to sit on the couch and just talk to me a little bit about what's going on." And when I did, and I told her what I needed to do, she said, "You're the one that's going to end up dead or in prison with these choices that you're making." And it kind of opened my eyes to what the choices that I was making in my addiction to get my drug were just leading me to chaos, financial ruin. Financial ruin looks like not paying your taxes for 3 to 4 years in a row. not paying your mortgage for 6 months and having somebody call and say, you're going to lose your home. And when that bottom hit, when all that stuff kind of came to a head, it was real, man. It was like, I gotta make better choices. I started going to Al-Anon, which I built a community, and it really helped me. It didn't work overnight. It wasn't like the next morning I woke up and says, oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, so you've been around Al-Anon and Nar-Anon for a few years now.
Many years, yeah.
But you told me something changed a couple of years ago. That's when it kind of started clicking for you. And what was the thing that clicked? And I know we don't do life perfectly, but you were able in your journey to relinquish some of that control. I mean, I see it different in you today.
Right.
You're not controlling the loved ones around you. You're not controlling the one who's on drugs. You're saying, this isn't mine to control. I can't do it anymore. What was the thing that changed?
Well, so the things that changed really I had to let go of the control. Some of the things that really changed were I allowed joy to come back into my life. And what I mean by joy, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not daily, but when I and it's hard to really feeling joy for me was not at the very moment. I feel it now in the moment, but 2 years ago, joy came into my life, and that when I left an experience, I thought in my head, I'm thinking, that's kind of joyful. I remember little things that happened during that time, that period of when I was experiencing joy, and I remembered it.
Yeah.
Joy is one of those things where it's hard to express, and I can express it in the things that I smell, taste, feel, and hear, and I remember those same feelings many days after, because before I felt joy, it was more like going to these things that you're supposed to go to, family functions, birthdays, all this stuff. But when I was there, I wasn't present. I was there, 5 or 6, 7 years ago. I was at these functions thinking to myself, all right, it started at 3, honey, we're going to get there a little bit early so we can leave on time because I got things to do. I got things to take care of. I've got other things I need to figure out what I'm going to do tomorrow.
And it all revolved around your addiction, being addicted to the loved one.
Just is around my addiction, around control, and between
so
those
ran
two,
your life the same way it ran our lives. That's what's so fascinating to me.
And it's this road you travel. You get on this rampage, and you're searching for something, and you find it. You get your high, and then all of a sudden it doesn't last very long, and all of a sudden you're searching for it again. You treat people bad, and it's this cycle. Really, I call it the cycle of death because, like the officers told me, John, you're the one that's going to end up dead or in prison.
Because you were doing some pretty shady stuff.
Stupid stuff. Yeah, my choices were just like an alcoholic or an addict. My choices of my behavioral choices, I would show up at family functions, and I would be the guy that's just like an alcoholic. He starts having too many drinks. All of a sudden, the family and friends are like, "Oh, there he goes. He's getting on his soapbox again. For God's sakes, we're not inviting him next time."
Yeah.
Happened to me. I'd get on my soapbox. I was hoping that people would get on my bandwagon because how bad my life was. I was chasing my drug, and people just ignored me and walked away. And soon after that, we would start getting invited to things 2 hours before they started, and I knew
they don't want John there.
They didn't want me there because all he's going to do is bring down the tempo. He's going to change the vibe. We don't want him.
Tell them how your prayer changed. What was your old prayer? In the depths of your addiction, your prayer was one line. What was it?
The prayer in my full addiction was, God, save the souls that pissed me off today, because I knew I was going out in the world that day and treating people badly. And during that time, I was always a religious person, very spiritual. I talked to God frequently, but I was very honest with him because sometimes on those days where I knew I was not going to be a good person and I couldn't stop myself, I couldn't stop myself. I'd get in the car and I'd say, God, I know today's not going to end very well, but I need you to ride shotgun today because I'm in control, I'm driving, and that's the way that the day went. On other days when other days I'd be like, hey, God, you're driving this. I get it, man. I'm going to follow your lead. But those bad days for me, he's riding shotgun, man. I mean, I'm in control.
And what's the prayer today? How to change?
Well, the prayer today is, God, thank you for today, and take care of my family.
Yeah.
And it's a simple one line every day.
And that's the change that happens within when we let go of some of the control.
Right.
Let's close with this. I know you had someone very close to you recently. You were telling a few of us in the cafe about it, that you lost someone that you loved to a fentanyl overdose just recently. And how did you handle that differently than you would have in the depths of addiction?
We did, and it's really sad. I mean, I handled it differently by acceptance and really understanding that I had no control, and I didn't go on my typical downward spiral and started treating people badly, all that stuff. But I took all the things that I've learned and all the work that I've put in, and know that things are going to be okay, and things like this do happen, but I didn't try to control the situation. I didn't try to control everybody and things like that.
And didn't beat yourself up with the what ifs. If you
Didn't
would have went to the old methods of control.
Right, if I would have done all this stuff, this would have not have happened. And, and that was my old way of just beating myself up, and the shame of me not doing anything. I had to let go a little bit of the control.
So, John, in closing, what's the one piece of wisdom you find yourself, because I know you help a lot of people, the loved ones who are struggling and holding on to that control, and they so badly want to save their babies, their sons and daughters, or other people they love, and what's the one piece of wisdom you find yourself passing on to others?
Really be patient. Do what you think is right. There's a lot of information out there about how you should respond to others, how you should not enable. You almost get information, you get paralyzed by all the information. And all I can say is do what you think is right. If there's some things that you felt like you didn't do perfectly, try it a different way. But really just love each other, whatever you're struggling with, whether you're a loved one struggling with your drug, or you're another person that's struggling with a different type of drug, just be patient with yourself. And if something doesn't work the first time, try something different.
Yeah, that's a good word. John will be hanging out for a few minutes afterwards, and I know he'd be happy to talk. If you want to get more of his story, if you're a loved one and you've been struggling with this stuff, this is a man that I deeply trust, and I know he'd be happy to talk to you. So talk to John Allison. John Allison, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, brother.
Thanks again, brother. This really helped me grow, dude. You don't know how much.
It's a growing moment for both of us. All right, y'all. Well, the way we close things down here at Free on a Saturday night is very similar to how we begin. We begin with, just make sure those are on. There you go. We begin with celebrations. We close with what we call heartaches. Maybe you've been carrying around burdens this week, and they're getting heavy and heavier and heavier, and you've been trying to do it alone. And frankly, you don't have to. It's why you have community. It's why we have a God who hears the cries of the people. So if you have a burden, something you need to articulate, to get out, to put words to it, that's what this time is for. We take 3 minutes for this. You can just raise up your hand. Tara will get you a mic on this side. Cody will get you a mic on this side. And if you're online, drop your burden, your heartache in the YouTube or Facebook comments, and we will heartache with you there. Let's take 3 minutes.
I'll start it off. I would love some prayer. About 2 days ago, my alcoholic lifelong friend moved out without saying anything and stole about $1,000 worth of my stuff. he's now got me blocked. I'm pretty hurt, so
Prayers for you and him. Yeah. Thank you for sharing with us, Cody. Is that mic not on? It is on. There we go. Cody's gonna hook you up, right?
Hello?
Oh, there you go.
All right. Yeah, so I have surgery Monday, man. I've been having some issues with my shoulder for a while, and just pray that everything goes good and I get it handled.
All right, brother, lifting you up. Glad you're here, Ray. Prayers for you, brother.
Hey, this is Tara. I got a quick one for you. I got the message today that my uncle passed today, and he had dementia, and he was on hospice. And I'm grateful for his relief, but I know my aunt and my cousins are struggling a lot. They would love the support.
All right. Prayers for your family, Tara.
Hello, my name is Monty. I'm here with the Palmer Lake Recovery Center. Prayers that go out to the people that are here and the people back at the center that might need help. I know we're all struggling with something that we call addiction, and it's very difficult. So any sort of prayers really help.
Yeah, I'm glad y'all are here. And everyone's struggling with something. So lifting y'all up tonight.
My name's Michael. First time here.
Welcome,
Thanks,
Michael.
Reverend. After I got sober, I developed an eating disorder, and I found a lot of relief from that, but lately it's felt like I've been running uphill. So just putting that out there and leaving it here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us and your vulnerability, and prayers for you. Glad you're here.
My name's Elizabeth, and I represent Palmer Lake Recovery, and I'm just wanted, I guess this is more of like a praise, but I really appreciate the message tonight, and I feel like there's a word, codependency, and I'm reading a book called Codependency No More, and it is so good. And I feel like what was touched on tonight is absolutely what that is, and it's so awesome to make people expose that dynamic so we can address it and get healthy together. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. It's a highly recommended book. Yes, read that book. Okay, we got one more. Monica, take us home.
My name is Monica. I had to put my 19-year-old cat down on Sunday, and the house has just been really empty, so.
Yeah. Monica, prayers for you. Yeah, get a hug from Cody. We're glad you're part of this community and lifting you up tonight. Sorry for your loss. Tara, you want to join me up here? Come on up, Tara. We'll join our online community and our monitors on, so we don't have to turn around. We can just look right here. You want to take the first one?
Sure.
Okay.
How's that sound?
You take the first one.
Pamela, how you doing? Steve's daughter-in-law is quite ill. She was going to have cardiac surgery, but now the doctors don't think her heart is strong enough to survive the surgery. Thoughts are with you, Pamela and family.
Yeah, lifting y'all up tonight. Glad you're joining us. Christy says, prayers for me and Justin tonight as we try to find a positive interaction with, rather than a negative reaction to one of our children making some unwise choices. All right, lifting y'all up tonight, those unwise choices. Prayers for you and how you handle it. Yeah.
All right, Stephen, please pray for John L. He lost his mother 1.5 years ago and his father this past fall. He's alone and feels every moment of his loneliness. He needs community, and I have directed him to Free.
Well, we'll be here for John L. Thank you for mentioning him and us. Thank you, Tara, for joining me up here. And thank you all for always sharing prayers and celebrations. And it all belongs in this community. It all walks together. So thank you. And if If you are looking for a place to donate, well, you need to know that Free Recovery Community relies on you, the people. We are funded by you, the people. If you've been impacted by the mission of breaking the silence of addiction, well, we welcome your generous giving here. I don't know, for many of you, you've made it a spiritual practice in your life. You've made it part of your life, giving. And I don't just mean here. You've made giving a part of your life, and you're better for it. There's a few different ways to give here. The first way is you can simply download the app, Free Recovery Community. It's got all of our content, all of our guest storytellers are on there, messages are on there. And there's a giving button. You can give one time, you can give weekly, monthly, however you want to do it. We're grateful for all of it. You can also do the exact same thing on the website, freerecoverycommunity.com. There's a giving button. You can do the same thing. Safe, secure way to give. And there are the giving kiosks. For those of you that still carry cash or checks, we take those things around here. So there's a giving box just beside these doors and one just outside of these doors. Feel free to hit it on your way out. And I shared with you all some bad news last week. The dip jar is no more. It was discontinued. Something happened and they said you got to unplug it immediately. So dip jar is no longer a company. So we're looking for other fun ways to give to replace the dip jar, but it is not an option tonight. And by the way, online people, I realize that so many of you give and you've never even stepped foot in this building, and we're grateful for it. We're grateful you're part of this community. Shall we go out with a prayer? Yes, I think we should. If you just want to open up your hands, just a simple sign of openness. Maybe you're dealing with some changes in life and you're going to be open to being still. You're going to be open to take a first step towards accepting what is. So just take a big deep breath. If you don't know the Lord's Prayer, well, it's on your screen and it goes like this. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Grace and peace to you. See you next time.